The exhaust is the best part of this car by far. Nothing compares. So I'm gonna start off this review of the SRT4 with one fact that you just can't get away from. It just is what it is. If you want one of these cars, you're not gonna look cool. This is probably one of the most hated cars out there. You know why? I know why. Here, I'll tell you right now. It's because everybody that gets these cars destroys them. They just absolutely tear them to bits. When they came out in 2003, they were the coolest thing ever. They were so cool. They were made to go against a Subaru, Toyota. It was supposed to compete with the front-wheel drive compact hatch cars. That's what it was supposed to be competing with. And when it came out, it did a great job. It stomped on all those cars. It was lightweight. It had good horsepower. I think they rated it at 230. It was either 215 or 230. I think in 2003 it was 215 horsepower, and then 0405 was 230. And Dodge actually underrated it. It came in at like 250, 255 when people actually took it to the dyno and tested it out. So it was a fast little car, and it only weighed 2,900 pounds, so it was quick. It beat everybody, but not only was it fast, it was affordable, and that's where it all went downhill. I mean, the car was affordable. I think I have to check on this, but I think it was like $16,000 to $20,000, something like that. And that was cheap even back in the day. And then everybody started buying them and started reselling them. The resale value was super low, and so it was really cheap and affordable because all they did was take a neon and beef it up, bigger brakes, bigger engine, and a turbo, and throw a wing and a hood scoop on it, and race car. It's just a race car now. But so that was Dodge's mentality, but that's always been their mentality. Let's take something we have and put as much power to it as we possibly can. And so that's what this car was. They had a base, they had the neon, and they slapped in a 2.4 liter with a turbo. And that's a massive 4-cylinder. You don't see very many 2.4 liters. So it was just a really good idea when they made it. But so to make it this quick, they had to cut corners though. So I mean, like it's kind of cheap inside. It's not fancy. You know, it's a neon. I had a normal neon before this, and it's just a neon inside with an autometer boost gauge on it. So it's not special, and a lot of people don't like that, and they talk a lot of crap about it, and I understand why. I mean, it's not, but it's a neon that goes fast. What do you expect? But besides the interior being cheap, this is a great little car. It keeps going, it's fast, it's a fun daily driver. The gas mileage isn't that great, but it kind of depends on how you drive it. I've gotten 30 miles per gallon out of this car driving it across country. But besides the interior being lackluster, this is a great car, and people have built these cars and have gone 10-second, 9-second quarter miles. I mean, it's a good car. Besides what everybody else says, it's the people who have bought these cars. They have destroyed its name. It was cheap, and they riced it out. Even the term for this car was I think American import, I think it was something like American import. That's just, what? Blasphemy. I don't even understand that. I mean, you can't look on Craigslist or OfferUp and find a good one. I mean, I had to go to Chicago to get this one, and that was hard enough, and it still has rust on it. It's not the greatest one in the world, but it only had 50,000 miles. People they just put bigger turbos, and they do horrible work. I mean, I've gone and looked at a bunch of these cars to try to find a good one, and every time I go look at an SRT4 to go buy, I promise you that someone's done something stupid to it, with vacuum lines hanging off, with just the poorest workmanship I've ever seen in my life on any car. All the people that own these cars just destroy them. They don't care. And it's just really, really upsetting. That's why it's a dying breed, and that's why everybody hates them so much. If you can find an SRT4 that isn't destroyed, you should get it, because it's so fun. It's a driver's car. It's just one of the funnest experiences you have, and the sound of these cars is amazing. All the pops and crackles, and if you have a blow-off plate, it sounds really cool when you shift. It's a fun driving experience. I think everybody that drives it will like it. And it handles really well. I'm on a twisty road right now, and it just sticks to the pavement. It's just a fun car. There is another drawback to this car, is the transmissions are pretty much made out of glass. And you know what? I don't know if they're made out of glass, but everybody that has had these cars just slams third gear like it's going out of style. You can't find these cars almost without a third gear grind. It's horrible. But it's like partly the owner and partly the way it was designed. These aren't very strong transmissions from the factory, and almost everybody that has one has an SRT4, puts a big turbo and makes 400 horsepower, and transmission wasn't made for that. It can't do it. So they end up just frying third gear. So that's a drawback. If you want to build one of these and make 400 horsepower reliably, before you get the engine worked on, you have to actually get the transmission worked on, which is a bummer. But it's just a bummer. It sucks, actually. These transmissions are lame. One of the coolest things that you can do for an upgrade for this car is, when it was released, Mopar made a Stage 3 kit, and it had a bigger turbine, which was a TD05 HR, which is it's a TD05 but with a reverse rotation, and they had a whole kit with injectors, fuel rail, and everything. It had tip sensors, map sensor. It was just, they did a really good kit, and you'd make like 350 horsepower just out of the gate, and then if you put it on E85, you could make 400 wheel horsepower, and that was so cool. 400 wheel horsepower in a car that weighs 2,900 pounds is insane. It's so fun. The only drawback is front wheel drive, and you won't have any traction, but it's such a fun experience. So Mopar came out with that, and when you bolt it on, it looks like a stock kit. It's great. That's one of the better upgrades for these cars, instead of going like with an aftermarket big turbo kit. If you can find a Stage 3 kit, way better. It spools faster. It makes just as much. Well, there is limitations to that turbo compared to like a 50 trim, but like I said, you're gonna blow transmission up if you go over 400 horsepower anyway, so might as well just stick with 400 horsepower and a really quick spooling turbo, so no one can beat you on the street if you can get traction. Let me reiterate. So my SRT4 is pretty much stock from the factory. It came with a Stage 1 kit, and so if it was supposed to be 230 horsepower, this was supposed to make it 260 horsepower. And so I think my boost level is like from 14, and with the Stage 1 PCM, I'm at 17, 18 is what I spike at. And so, yeah, it's around 260 horsepower to the flywheel, I think. And it's fun. It's still really fun. It has a blow-off plate for the blow-off valve. And it's not super fast or anything, but it's a fun driver's car. It gets me to work, and it's reliable. I haven't had any major problems. I think the worst thing that happened was my power steering switch broke, and it was leaking power steering fluid on the ground, but I filled that sucker back up and it ran well again, so no problems since then. It's just, I think if you maintain these cars, there's no problems. Just since it's like a 15-year-old car now, that most people didn't maintain them and they just beat on them, and so you lose a lot of that reliability when things aren't taken care of. It just stands to reason. So, but if you can find one that isn't beat up, I mean, it's been a great car. It hasn't, I mean, I've seen these cars with 250,000 miles on OfferUp and Craigslist that are still running great, and people are trying to get rid of them, but ain't no one want a 300,000 mile car. So another thing about the interior that is, it's just weird, and it's pretty lame too, is it has crank up windows in the back. Like, you're building a car and just whoever thought, let's put electric in the front and make those kids crank up the windows in the back. But the one thing I do like about the interior though is the seats. They're Viper inspired seats, and they hug you really well. I'm not a huge guy. I only weigh 170, but for me it's comfy. I could imagine if you were a bigger person, it could be pretty rough to get in here. I think they're really comfortable seats, but it's probably like the nicest thing about the interior is the seats, the tiny bit of leather in the buckets. And when I brought my car to the drag strip, I think I ran like a 13.5 second quarter mile, which it was either a 13 or a 13.5, which isn't fast, but it was quick. I mean, for a commuter car, it's pretty quick. Okay, I'm gonna give this guy the sauce because I can't take this. It's always fun. And then you hear the at the end. It's just so satisfying. I ran, I think, a 13 second quarter mile, which isn't like super duper fast, but I think it's pretty good for just a base level car. It's pretty quick. Another pro about this car is that I never get pulled over. Police don't even give you a second look because it's a neon with a wing on it. So that's one nice thing, is no one even takes a second look. They don't care, just keep on going, so that part's nice. But I know these cars came in some crazy colors, so that would have drawn attention. But for the most part, I'd never get pulled over. Cops never look at me. It's pretty good. But the downside to that is you have no respect. When people try to pass you, they're upset when you pass them. It's kind of funny. I mean, I can see when I pass people, like in the passing zone, you can just see it in their face that they are so upset that a neon just passed him. Another reason why I think this car has such a bad reputation is that when people do get beat by a Dodge Neon, they get butthurt, like bad. I mean, because you're getting beat by one of the lowest form of car, the Neon. I mean, I think these are great, but I mean, for other people's standards, like the lowest form of car just smacked you. Like, you just got whooped up on by a Dodge Neon, and I think that's really embarrassing, and that's another reason why people hate them so much. Buddy that I've talked to that owns an SRT4 is, it's not a Neon, bro. It's an SRT4. And it's a Neon. I mean, come on, don't lie to yourself. But all in all, if you are considering buying this car, I'd do it. It's a great car. Listen to those bald eagles. It's such a weird car. It's like not JDM, but it's not American muscle. It's like this weird, like in between.